Now that the engine is in, we need to attach the prop shaft to the engine, make sure that everything is fine there, add the prop shaft catcher for safety reasons, add the throttle bodies, the fuel system, and other things. So let's go through what I've done so far and what still needs to be done. Here's the mounting for the fuel pump and fuel sender. At the top you can see the fuel pump mounting with the cable that comes out, and also the fuel sender. This here is so air can get into the fuel tank as you drain it, and also let in air when you fill the tank. So if we look around to the fuel pump to start with, we've got the fuel pump here with sock. It's been extended, so traditionally this has joined onto this part here. We've extended it by probably 10 centimeters. The idea being we want the pump in as low as possible, and there's actually part of the tank where we can suck the fuel out of to give us the maximum amount of volume in the tank. Because we've done that, we've also installed a fuel filter and a 4-bar regulator. You'll see this strange bit of pipe here. That's the way that MK suggests that you attach it. On the other side, we've got a simple rod fuel sender, which fits nicely into the tank. So let's plonk it into the tank now. So here we have the fuel tank, and you can see, looking through the opening here, you can see the extra little anti-surge part of the tank right at the bottom there. That's where the fuel sock needs to reside. So let's put this in. So first of all, let's put the rubber gasket around and then lower the fuel pump and sender into it. Here we have the fuel pump and fuel sender installed. All we need to do now is hook up the line that needs to go through the tunnel to the engine now. And the fuel sender, obviously this all needs to be wired in. We've also got the fuel filler hose here. I've just put it in temporarily just to make sure I don't lose it. Okay, here is the engine. You can see that the prop shaft is now connected to the sprocket adapter that I've put in here, and I've tightened up the bolts, and I've got lines here to help me see if those bolts ever move. Obviously they were Loctited in as well. The actual uni joint here, you need to be very careful, because if you move the car, the uni joint obviously will move, and it is very close to the clutch slave cylinder here. So I did two things. First of all, I just took a file and I just ground that down a fraction, and similarly on the uni joint, I also just took off the edge of each side here where it goes past the clutch slave cylinder. Now I've got enough clearance. Similarly for the catcher here, the prop shaft catcher. So this is a safety item. In case this joint fails, then this will prevent the prop shaft from flailing around. It looks easy to put in, but what we don't see is, actually we do on this side, you see just here, you see there is a grease nipple, just there where my tip of my finger is. That of course turns with the prop shaft, and you can see that the prop shaft catcher isn't square to the prop shaft. So as it turns, it needs more clearance where my finger is than on the other side. And I had to clearance the prop shaft catcher a fraction in order for that grease nipple to be able to go past it without hitting. Yes, it's all very, very tight. At some point too, I need to install the shifter. I need to see how that's done, but it pivots off this bar here, and the shifter on the engine is over here. So we need to see how we're going to get that in. Currently I'm missing the bearings for the shifter mechanism, so I'll have to wait until MK can provide them to me, but I'm hopeful that that all fits. The other thing that I noticed was that I tried to attach the clutch line, which goes from here to the clutch. Now the line that that came with the kit was for right-hand drive cars. Now from the clutch slave cylinder to the pedal over here is only a very short distance. However, for left-hand drive cars, it's a lot longer. So you can see there are the pedals. This is the clutch over here. The clutch master cylinder is down there. So we need perhaps an extra 10 to 15 centimeters of cable length in order for that to fit. So that's something that I need to sort out with MK. Whether I buy it here in the States or whether I wait for MK to provide a long one, we'll see. But I think that's something that perhaps was an oversight in their left-hand drive parts list. To finish off the fuel system, I've got the fuel line routed through. You can see that I've got it in conduit there, got it routed around the diff, down the center tunnel, and then through up into where it connects to the throttle bodies underneath the engine. Here's a dry fitting of the steering column. You can see I've got the bearings there all loosely mounted. The shaft, so there's the top shaft, the intermediate shaft, and this has the ability to collapse, which is great in case of an accident. There's the uni joint there going to the lower shaft, and then there's the uni joint into the steering rack. So this is just for mock-up purposes. I just wanted to make sure I had all the components. Okay, now it's time to mount all the components onto the ECU panel here, mounting panel. So obviously one of the components is the ECU itself, which is over here. This here is for the security module. It will disable the ignition and the fuel pump. This is the starter solenoid, which is separate rather than being on the starter motor itself. This is the battery holder. I'll be using a PC680 Odyssey battery here, which can lie horizontal, which is great. Under here, we've got the Busa fuse box relays and some more relays. I've made little mountings here for it in order so that they can be mounted onto the panel. This black rectangle here is to mount a fuse box and relay box. So I'll be adding in relays for things like the wiper motors, the headlights, all those circuits that I'm not quite sure about whether the original motorbike wiring loom has enough current capacity. So I thought it'd be safe just to put in additional relays. So this is all okay. The problem is making sure that I can actually route the loom. So what we see here in the corner is the actual loom itself. I've taken off some of the coverings in order to make it a little bit more flexible. So here is the fuse box, some more fuses, some relays. They go in there. I'll be routing the loom underneath and then go down through this hole here in the middle. So most of the loom will be underneath this panel, and it will go to the various respective spots in the car. Most of the loom goes forward towards the engine for the injectors and various sensors and coil packs, what have you. And there are parts that, of course, that go to the rear of the vehicle, the lights, the reverse motor, things like that. So there's a bit of trial and error. Oh, and one thing I forgot to mention, I'm putting in some adapters here. I want to have these mounted underneath the scuttle so that one is for a USB charger and the other one is a battery tender connection. So I'll have these mounted up here, but from the underneath, so that I can connect them in the car while the scuttle is all bolted up. Okay, so now I've got the battery tray in, I've got the brackets to hold the fuses and the relays from the bike. I've got the tender and the USB connection in. Next is the starter solenoid and the security system. With respect to the ECU, I'm going to Velcro that in. I think that will be a better way of putting it. It won't hard mount it in, and it will mean that I don't have to build a strap to hold it in. Okay, here we have everything mounted onto the ECU panel. Obviously we have the ECU. We can see this is where the harness comes up into the ECU. We have the fuse box, we have the security module, the USB and tender connections, the starter solenoid, and we have the bike flasher unit, fuses, more fuses, and a relay. And the battery obviously is up here. A lot of this wiring is configured to fit into the bike. I've already stripped off some of the outer covering off. It makes it more flexible. So what I will do is, where appropriate, I will do that again so I can actually route it more easily and more flexibly where it needs to go in the car. So here's the header tank mounted for the cooling system. What I needed to do, I needed to grind down the bottom edge here. That plate to which it attaches has a weld on it, and that weld needs, you need to make room for it. So just filing down the bottom edge in order to get enough distance so that plate mounts properly is what you need to do. So now I need to put the oil catch can on. Okay, now we have the oil catch can attached as well. You can see that here. That went on without any issues. So now we have both the header tank and the catch can in. So we have to think about how we're going to get the radiator attached. Okay, I've got the radiator attached. These are the radiator brackets. And you can see that they go around and attach to the chassis through there. And you can see there's space for the rocker arm to move. The oil filter, the oil cooler needs to go in the front, and there are brackets for that as well. So that's what I need to do next, but it's looking pretty good. I've now got the radiator and oil cooler on. The oil cooler I have is the one for hot climates, and it's absolutely massive. I'm a little concerned that it will overcool the oil. I will need to just check on oil temperature to see whether that's actually true. If it is, then I'll put in some sort of thermostat bypass in the oil lines going to the oil cooler. But for now it's in. I'm going to run, rather than run the oil lines between the radiator and the oil cooler, I'm going to run them down the front and then around, thinking that that's less obstruction for cooling.